Goblin launch detected.
This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. If you're looking for cards in the US, look no further as you can use the promo code MTGMudsta to get you 5% off anything on the site. Or if you're in Canada like me, you can use the same promo code at Multizone to get 10% off your orders of singles. If cards aren't what you're looking for, Original Magic Art has playmats, tokens, and sweet art that you can use that same promo code to help you get 5% off your order there. And if you just want to help out the channel, you can always consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month and join the generic Goblin Gang. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game is another Jersey Boy special, with Trevor playing fan favorite Ikra and Vial Smasher. He keeps Curtain's Call, Chaos Warp, Seasons Past, Fury Storm, Imp's Mischief, Forest, and a Bloodstained Mire. Ryan is playing Zaxara, keeping a Tranquil Thicket, Swamp, Forest, Talisman of Curiosity, Cultivate, Vraska's Contempt, and a Finale of Revelation. Mike is playing Brudiclad, keeping an Island, a Mountain, Traumatic Visions, Chandra, Acolyte of Flame, Goblin Assault, Soul Ring, and a Sword of the Animist. Unfortunately, someone let Frank in, and he's playing Yarok, keeping Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth, Noxious Gearhulk, Springbloom Druid, Hostage Taker, Wall of Blossoms, and Sylvan Library. Frank wins the die roll and starts us off. He plays an Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, passing. Trevor draws and plays a Bloodstained Mire. He sacrifices it, losing 1 to find a Smoldering Marsh. Ryan just plays a tapped Tranquil Thicket. Mike draws and plays that fabled Island into a turn 1 Soul Ring. He's not done though, casting Sword of the Anime and passing. Frank draws and then plays a Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth, having enabled all of his opponent's lands to tap for black or green at this point. He casts a Wall of Blossoms, drawing a card as it enters, and passes. Trevor plays a Forest and taps 2 for Secure Tribe Elder. He shortcuts finding the land now and says he'll sacrifice it at Frank's next end step instead to save some time. Ryan plays a Swamp and casts Talisman of Curiosity, passing. Mike draws and plays a Mountain. Frank plays a Hinterland Harbor and casts Neoform, sacrificing his wall to go and find a 3-drop. He grabs a Reclamation Sage, which enters and blows up Mike's Soul Ring. With nothing else, he passes. Trevor draws and plays his own Urborg for even more swamps, and then casts a Vial Smasher. Ryan plays a Forest and casts his commander, passing turn. At the end of turn, Mike basic land cycles Traumatic Visions, going to find an island, and takes his turn. Mike plays an island, and then casts a Goblin Assault. Frank draws and plays a Misty Rainforest, sacrificing it and losing 1 to find an island. He then plays a Springbloom Druid, sacrificing the island to go and find an island and a swamp, and passes. Trevor swings Vial Smasher at Mike for 2, as Goblin Assault does force Vial Smasher to attack. Mike takes his 2, and Trevor passes. Ryan plays Cultivate, which Trevor responds to by casting a Fury Storm to get 2 copies of it. Trevor also rolls for Vial Smasher, and this has Frank taking the 4 at random. Trevor and Ryan then get their ramp on, and put lands to the hand and lands to the field, and Ryan then follows up with a Stonecoil Serpent where X is 4. This gets him a 4/4 Hydra off Zaxara, and Ryan then passes. Mike gets a Goblin token and draws for turn. He plays a Sulphur Falls and equips the Sword of the Anime onto the token. He swings a Hasty Goblin at Trevor for 2 and gets to find a mountain before it connects, and then passes to Frank. Frank drops a Command Tower for turn and casts a Sylvan Library and then casts Hostage Taker. It comes in and targets Ryan's commander. Moving to combat, Frank then swings the Reclamation Sage at Trevor for 3 and passes. Trevor draws and then plays a Mountain. He casts Lightning Greaves, and once more Vial Smasher quote-unquote randomly hits Frank again for 2. Moving to combat, he swings Vial Smasher at Mike, dealing 2 commander damage, and passes to Ryan. Ryan draws and goes to combat. He swings the Hydra token at Trevor and the Serpent at Frank, with each of them taking 4, and he passes turn. Mike makes a Goblin on his upkeep and draws. Moving to combat, he swings the Sordid token at Trevor and the other Goblin at Ryan. They both take their damage, while Mike gets to go and find a basic mountain off the sword trigger, and with nothing else, passes. Frank draws 3 cards after activating his library, and puts 1 back, taking 4. He plays a Zagoth Triome, and then casts a Simic Signet. Once that's done, Yarok joins the party, but Ryan Void Shatters Yarok in response. Moving to combat, Frank swings 5 at Trevor. Trevor responds by casting Curtain's Call on Frank's attackers, with Vial Smasher hitting Mike's this time for 6. Frank's attackers are taken out, and he then passes turn. Trevor draws and plays a Forest. He casts a Primal Amulet, with Vial Smasher hitting Ryan for 4. In combat, Trevor swings Vial Smasher at Mike again for another 2, and passes to Ryan. Ryan draws, and then plays Sunken Hollow for turn. Moving to combat, he swings the Hydra at Trevor and the Serpent at Mike. They each take 4, and in his second main phase, Ryan casts Finale of Revelation where X is 6. This makes him a 6/6 Hydra token, and then resolves the spell. Ryan then passes turn and moves to discard down to hand size. Mike makes a Goblin token and draws for turn. Moving to combat, Trevor terminates the Sordid token, with Vial Smasher hitting Ryan for 2. Mike then swings 2 Goblins at Trevor, dealing 2, and in his second main phase, casts a Magmatic Force before passing turn. On his end step, however, Trevor uses Chaos Warp on the Magmatic Force, which shuffles it in, and once Mike's done shuffling, flips it into a Wayfarer's Bauble. Frank draws, but doesn't keep any extras from the library. He casts Vivian, Champion of the Wilds, and downticks her to exile a card. Moving to combat, Frank swings 1 at Trevor, and then casts a Toxic Deluge in the second main phase, losing 6 life. After the board is wiped, Frank passes. Trevor draws and casts his own Soul Ring, and then uses that to help cast Seasons Past, grabbing back Bloodstained Mire, Terminate, Chaos Warp, Fury Storm, and Curtain's Call. Ryan plays a Command Tower and recasts his commander. Mike makes a Goblin token, draws for turn, and plays an island. He equips the Sword of the Enemy onto the Goblin and swings it at Vivian, grabbing a mountain. He then casts Zariel, Archduke of Avernus, making a Devil token and passing. Frank plays a Reflecting Pool and then recasts his commander. At his end step, Trevor casts Curtain's Call on Yarok and Zaxara, and Ryan responds by attempting to counter it with Disallow. Trevor responds to this by casting Imp's Mischief to redirect the Disallow to the Mischief, effectively countering it and losing 3 life. The Primal Amulet also flips, and then Trevor moves to his turn. Trevor draws and recasts Vial Smasher. He moves through combat and equips the Lightning Greaves onto his commander so he doesn't have to attack. Ryan draws and plays a Field of Ruin. He casts a Hungering Hydra where X is 5, and passes while Mike cracks the Wayfarer's Bauble at the end step to find a basic. Mike, a man after my heart, once more makes a Goblin token and draws a card. He plays an Exotic Orchard and moves to combat, swinging the team at Trevor, and goes to grab a mountain. Vial Smasher eats the 2/2 token, and Trevor takes 1. Mike then moves the sword to the Devil, and makes another Devil token with Zariel before passing to Frank. Frank only keeps 1 off his library again as he draws, and then casts a Languish to wipe the board, with the Devils pinging Ryan's remaining Hydras in his face for 1. Frank then follows up with a Temur Sabertooth, with Ryan cashing in Field of Ruin and hitting the Primordial Wellspring. Trevor responds by casting Chaos Warp and gets a copy, targeting the Sabretooth and Zariel. This has them getting shuffled in, and Mike hits a Ghost Quarter while Frank hits Finale of Devastation, which he then sadly has to shuffle away as he goes to find a basic from the Field of Ruin. Trevor draws and casts Ikra Shadiki. He equips her with the Lightning Greaves and goes to combat. He swings at Ryan for 3 and gains 7 off of her ability, and then passes turn. Ryan plays a Tech Edge for turn, and then cycles Krosan Tusker to go and find a forest and draw a card, and passes to Mike. Mike makes another Goblin token and draws, equipping the Sword to the Goblin. He then casts Brudiclad and moves to combat, making a Mirror token and turning the Goblin into a mirror. He swings the Sordid Mirror at Ryan for 3 and gets to find a basic, and passes. Frank decides to keep 1 extra from the library, losing 4, and once more casts a Tamur Sabretooth, which he'd redrawn off the top. He follows up with a Treachery, targeting Brudiclad, and as it enters, steals the commander and untaps 5 lands. Moving to combat, he makes a 2/1 Mirror token and swings it at Trevor for 2. With nothing else, he passes. Trevor recasts Vial Smasher in his main phase and moves the Lightning Greaves over onto them. Ryan responds with a Hero's Downfall on it, and Trevor retaliates in combat by hitting him for 3 with Ikra once that's all done, and he gains 7 life. Trevor then passes to Ryan. Ryan draws, plays a forest, and recasts his commander. Mike makes a Goblin token and draws for turn. He once more equips the Sword to the Goblin token and goes to combat, swinging it at Trevor for 2. He finds his land and passes to Frank. Frank decides not to keep any extras from the library and goes to combat. He makes another Mirror token and swings everything at Trevor for 12. Trevor just takes the hit, and Frank then passes. Trevor draws and swings Ikra at Ryan for 3 again and gains 7. In his post-combat main phase, he puts to stack a Decree of Pain, which Frank responds to with a heroic intervention to save his board. Trevor does still draw 5 cards though, and then plays a Woodland Cemetery, passing to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a forest. He just casts a Gem Razor and passes to Mike. Mike makes a Goblin token and draws for turn. He plays an island, and then a Mimic Vat, and once more equips the Sword of the Anime onto a Goblin token. He swings the Goblin at Trevor, grabs a land, and deals 2, and then passes to Frank. Frank decides to keep 1 extra from the library, losing 4, and then plays a Birthing Pod, paying 2 more life for the Phyrexian mana for a big ouchie this turn. He moves to combat and makes a Mirror token off of Brudiclad, and swings everything at Trevor. Trevor takes the hit for 14 and dips dangerously low in life. In the post-combat main phase, Frank then sacrifices the Brudiclad to the Birthing Pod and goes to find an Avenger of Zendikar. It enters, getting him 9 plant tokens, and he passes to Trevor. Trevor draws and plays a Verdant Catacomb for turn. He then casts Ribbons out of his graveyard where X is 5, holding priority to cast Fury Storm and targeting it. Ryan casts a Void Slime to try and counter the Ribbons, and Trevor responds by casting Pyroblast to counter that and let his Ribbons resolve. Trevor then gets 5 more copies of Ribbons, dealing a total of 30 damage to the table and taking out the game and winning him the game. Game review time. So that was a lot of interaction in this game, and I was really kinda happy to see Trevor have to fight through his combo to win. When Trevor first built the deck, I think he was focusing primarily on Vial Smasher, but Ikra Shadiki certainly does her own work in this deck, and she definitely helped keep him alive in this game. Ryan's Zaxara, the Exemplary deck, seemed to be more focused on Hydras, and I'm always interested to see how it does compared to something like Gargos, which we know is a very strong Hydra-based deck. It seemed like in this game he didn't cast too many X spells, but he did get to do some damage, although he suffered heavily from the board wipes. I'm sure Mike would agree, but it seemed like all his Brudiclad deck did was make 1/1 Goblin tokens and play or find lands. Unfortunately, that wasn't as aggressive as he wanted it to be, and I'm pretty sure he wanted to make the magmatic force into a token so that he could make a ton of tokens of those with Brudiclad's ability, but unfortunately that timely Chaos Warp stopped him from doing so. I don't mean to dump on Frank, because as much as I give him a hard time, I really enjoy playing with him, but I don't have much to say about his Yarok deck. It seemed to be like a stock list with a lot of good cards that have ETB effects that he wanted to double, and beyond that, I'm not too sure what else to say. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, but it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.